Investing at retirement can change your mindset. So today we're going to look at how would I do it? Fellow investors, bonjour. This is Mike Leroux, founder of Dividend Stocks Rocks and passionate investor. You're listening to the Dividend Guy blog podcast where I and my co-host Véronique will help you invest with more conviction so you can enjoy your retirement. Growth investors, bonjour, Mike Leroux here. You're listening to the Dividend Guy podcast. And after talking a little bit more about retirement today, we're going back a little bit more about investing, but halfway, I guess. Right, Vero?
Well, today we kind of wrap up our retirement mini series with a powerful question. How would you, Mike, invest 1 million at retirement? We'll also explore how you would plan for your spouse who has an entirely different investing mindset and
To say
how
the
to make
least.
sure, to say the least, yes, and how to make sure your heirs aren't left guessing. So this is about more than investing. It's about peace of mind, really.
Yeah, and the idea came after, I've been told that I would invest differently for the past 20 years. Like literally. Like I started investing in 2003, and then at any stage of my life, people would say, "Oh, but wait, you're going to change. You're going to modify your strategy, you're going to do this, do that." And ironically, I've been focusing on dividend growth investing for the past 15 years and still not changing anything. So that will be an interesting way to see if I'm thinking that I'm going to change anything by the age of 70 or 65 or whatever. And that was kind of funny. Not too long ago, we had a webinar with our members, and one member said, like, Mike's probably going to die with 100% of his portfolio invested in the stock market. And I was like, yeah, maybe that's the truth. Maybe that's the truth. But there's more to it, actually.
All right. So first of all, Mike, why 1 million? Like, is the number really important here?
No, definitely not actually. It's a pretty good question, but just wanted to have like a number that we can easily run like napkin math, as I like to say, just because we don't have like any visual support. We're a podcast, so it's a little bit harder to imagine how would I withdraw 4% out of like $467,000,
Hmm.
right? It's just like makes it hard for us to do the
Right.
math. So $1 million, but the percentage will be the same. So the point of this episode is, yes, we're talking about a million, but it's the same thing. I mean, if you're like, for example, if you're aiming at like 4%, so it's $40,000 on $1 million, or $18,680 if you invest with $467,000. It's really up to you. But the point is really this: it's not like the strategy will not change if I have $200,000, 2 million, 5 million, 25 million. I would use the same strategy. The
Hmm.
budget and the luxury of my retirement will greatly change. That's for sure.
Right.
But in the end, we mentioned that in a previous episode, you cannot make money out of thin air. You cannot generate returns out of nothing. So it is not true that you can generate the same income in a safe way if you have $500,000 or if you have like 1.2 million. So that's just the point of focusing on the percentage and the strategy today. We're going to use a million because it's just easy to make round numbers, but that's
Right.
about it.
So, Mike, this is not a surprise. You would use dividend growth stocks to invest 1 million at retirement. This is a strategy you've been using since 2010. But how can this strategy generate income at retirement?
So first I wanted to point out that we should not confuse dividend investing with dividend growth investing. If you invest using dividend investing, super easy. As I said, you build $1 million portfolio, it generates like 4% in yield. You get $40,000 per year, and all you need to do is to make sure that the stocks in your portfolio increase their dividend just to match enough the inflation. So like a
Right.
3% dividend growth rate across your portfolio should be enough to get that 4% yield, generate $40,000 plus inflation forever. Dividend growth investing is more complex. It's more complex, but it will likely generate better results. I've been doing the comparison actually for 12 years at DSR, and that's worked perfectly. So for
Mhm.
that time, of course, 12 years, I would say it's an all right time horizon to look at something. It's not enough, but by the time I get to it's enough, I'll be like 85, and then it's going to be pointless because I won't be able to go back in time. So I have to work with what I have right now. The focus of the strategy is more about total return. So I don't mind the yield. That's a very key point. So I do have some companies in my portfolio that will pay 4, 5, 6% yield, but that's not an end goal. That's not a criteria for me. I don't even look at the yield. I look at the business, and I make sure that the dividend keeps on growing. So the point here to generate income, to go back to your question, is you get your dividend and it keeps on growing. And so it's like literally like having a pay raise every single year. And that's the goal. Ideally, you get a larger pay raise, a generous pay raise. So it will also cover for some of the impact of the market if your portfolio generates a higher income every year. But if that income grows by like 5, 6, 7% a year, you don't have to worry about inflation. And eventually it's going to snowball into a much larger portfolio that will pay you a lot more, which is kind of tempting at retirement to think that your income will not only be on pace with inflation, but actually going to increase moving forward.
Okay, so for the sake of listeners who might not know you much, summarize how you select dividend stocks, dividend growth stocks, I should say, for your portfolio.
So I would go a little bit larger because we're thinking about retirement here. So the asset allocation will change a little bit at this point, but we're going to talk about that later today. But right now, my asset like it's important to start with basic rules. So asset allocation, I want to be 100% in stocks. Then I want to have roughly 50% in Canadian stocks, 50% in US, because I want to be exposed to both countries. I like the US stocks because they are like very strong in specific sectors that we don't really have in Canada, such as technology,
Mhm.
for example, or companies that are more international. So having like 40, 50, 60% of the revenue generated offshore. Again, very hard to find in Canada. So I want to maintain that balance. I want a portfolio with 30 to 40 stocks maximum, more close to 30, 35 to be honest, but I would be willing to extend to 40 in any case. So my ideal position, if I had a perfectly equally weighted portfolio, should be around 3%. That's more like a target position. We discussed that in a previous episode where it
Mhm.
helps me making decisions about entering into a new position, selling funds, how do I invest? So I'm trying to get that target. Based on that, then I want to select the best of companies per sector. Not necessarily all of them, just sector that I prefer, that I understand, that I'm comfortable with, and to select what I call the best companies. Because I mean, it's easy to say, oh, we just pick the best companies. I sound like a fund manager. They're all telling you that with our strategy, we're going to invest in the best growing companies. I mean, yeah, we make mistakes. Everybody make mistakes. But to avoid that, I will focus on companies with a set of strong metrics. I've built the dividend triangle, which is a set of like three metrics. So I look at revenue growth, earnings per share growth, and dividend growth, the trend more than the numbers over the past 5 and 10 years, to determine if the company is thriving right now and what are the chances that it will continue to thrive in the future. Because
Mhm.
thriving companies, instead of like a company that yields like 2%, 3%, 6%, that's just a metric that has like other kind of impacts, but it's not telling me if the business will able to increase its dividend, if the dividend is safe, if it's just thriving or not. So I want to have those three metrics telling me, oh, this company finds ways to increase their sales years after year. They make more profit, so they have their budget under control and their margin under control. And of course, once you generate more sales and more profit, well, it's tempting to have more dividends. So you want to have management telling me, oh, don't worry, Mike, even if the stock market goes down, even if our stock price is down 20%, we still increase our dividend by 5, 6, 7, 10% because we know the business is doing well, not the stock, but the business is doing well. We know what's going to come up in the future. We'll generate more cash flow, and it's okay to stay invested with us. So, this is why I focus on the dividend triangle to make my decisions.
Okay, let's go back to the inflation part for a minute. How does dividend growth offer inflation protection or capital preservation?
Well, with this methodology, you have like a dividend that will grow a lot faster than inflation year over year. So that's a lot easier. Over the years, when I look at my portfolio, I see high single digit to double digit dividend growth from one year to another. So I'm not only just like matching inflation, I'm destroying inflation. I don't even have to worry about it because the company is growing a lot faster its dividend payment. In terms of capital reservation, is if you're investing in a thriving business that has a lot of growth vectors, that has a lot of ways to make growth good profit, well, chances are those companies are not going to crash and burn. I mean, because they're exactly
Mhm.
doing the opposite. So I find it safer when you look at studies. Dividend growers and initiators tend to not only beat the market for a long period of time, but also do it with less volatility. But when you think about it, it only makes sense. It's just like by investing in companies that are able to grow the three metrics of the dividend triangle. Yes, you can make mistakes. It's not like a bulletproof
Mhm.
strategy, but you increase your chances of selecting companies that will do well over time, that will continue to thrive. And this is how you can preserve your capital, is by investing in healthy company instead of like going for a business. If you focus just on yield and ignoring the fact that the business is struggling, not growing their revenue, having a hard time to find ways to grow their earnings, and then the dividend is not increasing at all or increasing by like 2% a year, well, then you're barely matching inflation. Yes, you get the yield, but the fundamentals of that business is telling you otherwise. It's telling you it maybe in 5 years we're not going to be able to pay the dividend anymore if we don't make changes. So I
Right.
think it's taking a higher risk in that regard.
I think we could compare that to like our health. For example, if someone eat healthy and train and walk every day and all that stuff, that person has less chances to have like cancer or other like big important disease.
Its life expectation is definitely
Yes,
higher. I mean, it doesn't mean that he could not die from a heart attack or from a cancer in five
exactly.
years, but you put odds on your side, definitely.
Exactly. Hey, dividend growth investors, this is Vero. Mike is currently taking a sip of water, which gives us 10 seconds, and I literally mean 10 seconds to grow the podcast together. Go on Spotify or Apple Podcast, hit pause, and then under our logo, you'll see two very interesting buttons. One to subscribe, hit that subscribe button now, and then give us a 5-star rating. Our goal is to help more investors just like you. So please spread the love. Thank you. Okay, so how does managing a dividend growth portfolio at retirement differ from managing it in the accumulation phase?
So, as I said earlier, I just like right now, I just focus 100% stocks. I don't mind about anything else. And I just manage the portfolio like the way you should manage your portfolio. You monitor quarterly, you do a full review every year, you do some tweaks. Some years you don't even make trades, and there you go. When you get into retirement, it's a little more complex because first,
Mhm.
the asset allocation must change. It must change because I'm not focusing on the yield. Chances are my portfolio is not going to generate 4, 5, 6% yield. So I will not be able to generate 40, 50, $60,000 in income from that portfolio. Keeping in mind, we're talking about $1 million here. So if I have to sell shares on top of getting the dividend, it's great when the market is up, not so much when the market is down. So you
Right.
want to protect your portfolio against the sequence of withdrawals. And this is something that comes up like often when we talk about investing in equities. Is just like, yeah, that's all great and fun when the market is up 10%, but when the market is down 20 and now you have to withdraw, like sell for 5% of your shares on top of that, you're digging a big hole and eventually
Mhm.
it will put your retirement at risk. And that's totally fair. So I see like investment planning, like my investment plan at retirement in three different buckets. So the liquidity part. So the liquidity part is really having a cash reserve. So money that I can take when the market is down to complete my retirement income. And then
Right.
you have stability. So stability could be created by like CPP as we discussed last episode, or a pension plan or rental income. That is like a stable flow of income. In this specific case, we ignore how much we're going to receive in pension and government benefits and any other source of income. We just focus on that $1 million we have in that portfolio. So the stability will come from the dividend payment.
Right.
As we said earlier, if you focus on companies that are thriving with a set of strong fundamentals, chances are that even if you're making a few mistakes along the way, and then some companies will eventually cut their dividend, overall, the dividend income will remain stable. So now we have liquidity, we have stability, and then you need some growth. So especially if you retire younger and you expect to retire like for 30 years, you want to make sure that your portfolio has some ways to grow a bit faster than the inflation so you can continue to enjoy retirement as you age.
Hmm.
So cash reserve, dividend payment, then some total return from the portfolio. So if you go for the math as an example, you could invest $950,000 in a portfolio that generates a yield, let's say, of 2.5%. So not very high, very low actually, but stay with me for the math. So at 2.5%, that's almost $24,000 a year that you're going to generate. And then you invest the remaining 50K into GICs, like 1, 2, and 3 years. Roughly, it's going to be like $15,000 per year, a little bit more than $15,000 per year. Again, let's say we generate 2.5%. So again, I'm not trying to be overly optimistic. Right
Hmm.
now, we could actually invest that $50,000 in a small GIC ladder of 3 years at a better rate. But still, the point here is to be conservative. So then I have roughly $24,000 coming from the 950 that is invested in dividend. And then I have like another 1,200 from the $50,000 at 2.5. So overall, I get $25,000 generated by a mix of interest income and dividend income. That's the stability part. And of course, I have access to that $50,000, well, a part of it every year. That is the liquidity. So each year, I look at my portfolio. And if I want to complete my retirement budget and make it 40, I'm still missing $15,000. So that
Hmm.
includes that I should have to sell for $15,000 worth of share. $50,000 out of like 950, that's roughly a total return of actually a capital appreciation of 1.6%. So as long as my portfolio on a year, if I forget about the 2.5% yield, as long as it generates more than 2% in returns, to keep rough numbers, I can easily sell shares. And still, I will have that 950 intact,
Right.
probably even gonna grow on a
Right.
bad year. Because, of course, not all years are going to generate like a 2% return plus the 2.5 from dividends. So, roughly like 4.5, 6%, 5% returns. Of course, some years we're gonna be down 10%. Like 2022, my portfolio was down 12%. On that year, I'm not gonna sell shares. I'm going to actually use one of the GIC expiring on that year and take that $15,000 from the GIC. What's going to happen in the future with this strategy is I have enough liquidity to go through a bear market that will live for 3 years before recovering. On average, a bear market will last 1.5 to 2 years before it fully recovers. I'm
Hmm.
adding another year as a cushion of security, but of course, I would not be fully protected if I go into another financial crisis such as 2008 or the tech bubble of 2000. That took more like 4 to 5 years to fully recover. So then you
Right.
have a choice of maybe you're going to put a little bit more into cash reserve to fully cover all of those. It's going to generate a little bit less income, but still
Hmm.
you have that possibility. Or you can say, well, I'm good with 3 years. And if it ever happens on the fourth year, I will have to sell some shares, but I will still be on the recovery mode at this point. So it's not going to be that bad.
Okay, but what are the key traits of an investor to manage their dividend growth portfolio effectively at retirement?
So as you saw, it is a little bit more complex. It's and you need time, interest, and knowledge. And if you have time and interest, you can learn. So that's not a problem. Especially, I mean, I guess the most important one is if you have interest in managing your portfolio. Because once you're
Hmm.
interested in it, you're gonna make time. And if you make time, then you can learn. You also need to have a bit of a higher risk tolerance. If you freak out every time your portfolio goes down by 5%, it's probably not the right way to do it because when you are in full control like this, you are also fully aware of what's going on. So whenever I look at my portfolio, I know exactly how much I'm losing or how much I'm making every single day. That could create a lot of anxiety. So if you're not willing to take over that control, well, then another solution would be better off for you. But for someone who has that time, interest, and knowledge, or just willing to learn, well, then it's great because you really are the owner of your income, not just the portfolio, but you are able to adjust and you are able to make the tweaks and you see everything that is going forward. And being under control, at least for me, means that I'm a lot more confident in the future.
But why isn't dividend investing set it and forget it?
It's actually a classic mistake that a lot of investors make where they think a company that was great 10 years ago will be great forever. I wish it was the case. I
Mhm.
wish we could just invest, set it, and forget it. And unfortunately, that's not the truth. I mean, I can just remember of like BCE. That was a great deluxe bond for many, many
Mhm.
years. Like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that was the kind of business that was great because you get a little bit of growth, you get a good yield, and on top of that, the dividend keeps on increasing. If you're looking at BC's situation today, the stock price has dropped drastically. The dividend is under a lot of pressure. We're recording this like a few weeks in advance. And at this point, I would say, I just have to highlight this BCE could cut their dividend at any time in 2025. I would not be surprised.
Right.
So going from a deluxe bond to a company that I'm not sure, I would not bet one of my children on that. Like that would keep the dividend safe. Okay, maybe I would not bet my children anyways, but anyway, you get the points, right? So it's just you go from something super safe, super stable, great business as not too sure it's going to end up
Mhm.
right, or maybe they're like we're gonna have like more problems going ahead. So you have to be on top of everything. You have to monitor your portfolio quarterly. You have to make tweaks every year to avoid getting stuck into a dividend trap or losing money eventually.
Of course, you use dividendstocksrock.com to manage your portfolio. I believe you intend to use these tools as you age also, but which tools do you think are must haves for retirees managing a portfolio?
The first thing that you must have, and you don't necessarily have to subscribe to a service for that, it's just going to take a little bit more hard work creating that Excel spreadsheet, is you need to be able to create a global view of all your portfolios. I mean, classic Canadians will have like 4 or 5 accounts, and then you had your spouse, and then you're quickly go between 8 to 10 accounts. If you don't do a global view, you cannot do tax optimization. So some investment products are better off to be in the an RSP or in a TFSA or a non-registered. So
Mhm.
having that global view will be able to enable you to track your diversification in terms of assets, in terms of sector, your dividend income, the dividend diversification, knowing where the money is coming from each stocks, and you'll be able to combine those portfolio to do the tax optimization. So you need a global system. Some brokers could give it to you. If not, you can tweak some Excel spreadsheet. It's going to be some work, but it's going to work. The second thing is, as I mentioned earlier, if you have to make tweaks, well, you probably need a good stock screener as well to do some research. Again, it's all related about having time, interest, and knowledge. Like what we do at DSR is we help you save time because we do the screener for you, we do the analysis for you so you can just read instead of like doing the research. We make it interesting because I mean, I just can't get enough about investing. So, I mean, when we do like those webinars, you have any questions, I do private webinars for my members, and I'm having a hard time stopping after 2 hours and 30
Right.
minutes. That's crazy. Like we do two
I
hours and a
need to
half, and I'm
stop
like,
adding
yeah,
questions.
you're actually the safeguard here because sometimes I could go until the like for 4 hours or until I faint or something. So, anyways, so we make it interesting and we cover all the knowledge that you need. That's the most important part. We have like a lot of educational tools that if you have like some interest in some time, you can do it with a full service like Dividend Stocks Rock. But if not, there's a free solution where you build your own Excel spreadsheet. You do the digging into the financial statements, you look at investors' presentation, earnings calls, and so on. All of this can be done by yourself. It's just a little bit more complicated. But for some people, as they age, it's just a great hobby and they just love doing
Mhm.
that as well. So that's great.
But is this strategy still doable for retirees who don't feel confident reading earnings report or like tracking dividend trends and such?
I would say you really need to have a some kind of like a base of knowledge and interest into investing. If you think today, "Oh, I'm fed up with my advisor, I'm going to manage my portfolio, I know nothing and I don't want to read a single number on a piece of paper," even a system like DSR is not going to make it. You're going to make huge mistakes by investing in stocks that like maybe I have conviction in, but you have no conviction whatsoever. So
Mm.
it's the classic that you can borrow my idea, but you cannot borrow my conviction, and therefore you go back to not knowing what you invest and why, like not knowing what you own and why you own it, and that's
Mhm.
incredibly dangerous. So if you're not confident to at least spend the time to do that kind of research, read a little bit more and understand in what you're investing, managing your portfolio by yourself is like a recipe for disaster. And in the end, the ultimate goal here is not to beat your neighbor's return, is to achieve your financial goals and to retire happy. You're not going to retire happy if you don't know what you do with your portfolio.
Right. And what are the traps not to fall into when using dividend stocks?
Of course, the yield. I mean, that's kind of obvious, but even one step forward is to take it for granted. A lot of investors think that like management number one priority is to keep the dividend alive, which is definitely not. Yeah, they're going to say,
Mhm.
yeah, the dividend is safe, this and that. But in reality, if they are forced to make a choice, they are likely going to cut the dividend in the first place. Why? I mean, it's kind of simple. The dividend is not helping the business. So of course they're going to pay off their debts. They're going to lay off some employees to make it more like effective business, more lean. But in the end, if they need cash flow, a great source of cash flow, literally, I see that as like the allocation you give to your children when they are young. If you lose your job, that's probably the first thing that you're going to cut. I mean, of course, it sucks for your children, but it's better that you can pay groceries than you can give them $10 a
Right.
week because they're cleaning up the dishwasher or something like that. So just to come back here, it's important not to take it for granted. It's important to review your stock, and then another classic one that goes along for all kind of companies. It's assuming a great company will come back. We've seen that so many times, and investing based on hope. Hope is not an investing strategy. It's not a good thing. Also, some people I hear, oh, but in 3 5 years it's going to come back. Wow. Okay. So ask yourself what the company must do in those three to
Mhm.
five years to make a comeback. Because the comeback is not going to happen because it's going to happen. And then you realize, okay, so what would be the game plan here? Okay, you need to do this. You need to pay off debts. You need to sell some assets. You need to, I don't know. And then you can like determine if it's a realistic plan or not. I mean, you're not going to wait till to this date that BlackBerry is going to make a comeback and sell more BlackBerry phones than iPhones, right? It's not going to happen. Never going to
Mhm.
happen. So maybe BlackBerry is going to transform into a new great company in the future, but then you need to lay out the plan and then say, well, are we closer to hope here, or is it really tangible action that they're already taking and it's about to boom? This could help you to to determine if a company will do a comeback or not.
So, Mike, do you intend to make like subtle changes to your strategy upon retirement? And if so, what would they look like?
You know, I work very hard to create like simple investment rules to follow that actually work. So I don't intend to make any other modification besides having a cash reserve, because the cash reserve is like super important to ensure that I am not forced to sell shares at retirement. But that's the only modification. Every like all the low yield growth, high dividend growth stocks that I have in my portfolio, I find them a lot safer than struggling companies paying a high yield. And just to go back on that for a second, during the market crisis of 2020 in March and April, when people were freaking out, I usually told them, you know what, I focused on companies that had like a thriving dividend triangle in the technology world. I was like, wow, like Microsoft, Apple, they're gonna thrive in this environment, even if we have lockdowns for 3 years. And it ended up like being a lot safer than a lot of like high yielder stocks.
Right. Okay, so listeners, you might know that by now, but we have a community, a retirement community called Retirement Loop. And in that community, I've asked members how do they manage their portfolio for their spouse? And a lot of them, many of them realize that they never really discussed that. So we thought this is a good way to introduce that discussion to you. So your spouse, Mike, is totally different from you in terms of investing. How would you describe her profile?
I would describe her profile by saying that if I align 5 sentences about the financial markets, she probably stopped me at the fourth one. So she had no time to give it to it, no interest, no knowledge, and we are good partners because we've been together for ages. So we are able to rely on each other's strengths. So she
Mhm.
knows that I'm super passionate about that, and this is one of my biggest strengths. So she's just like, you know what? Take care of it. That's perfect. I don't need to know anything. And I have a feeling that it is often the case for many couples that one of the other, like one partner, has at best limited interest, but most of the time, no interest at all. And they're just like, I don't want to do anything there. So having that discussion on retirement loop with other members that are older kind of like forced me to realize, wow, I'm in this same boat. Like, what's
Mhm.
going to happen the day that I am not? able to manage my portfolio anymore, regardless of what could happen. And regardless about the hedge, I need a backup plan. So I had to started talking about that with my wife, and she had to be willing to at least accept that I will align more than 5 sentences about finance that time.
So, with that in mind, you can't assume that she would take on managing your investment should something happen to you, like mentally or physically. So, how would you invest for her and your heirs?
Yeah, so we had to discuss this at first, and then the best scenario I see would be to go with an all-in-one ETF. No investment types are perfect, so just keep that in mind. But the goal here is to reach your retirement goals and to reach your financial goals, not to beat your neighbor's return. The all-in-one ETF is perfect in a sense where it is incredibly simple. She would have one line in their broker statement, like just one line. That would be super
Hmm.
easy. Like, yo, you have $100,000 in that account. Well, you have $100,000 in invested in all-in-one ETF, and there you go. I would probably go for something like 80% stocks, 20% bonds, mostly because she trusts how it works. So she doesn't really have much knowledge, but kept on hearing me enough for the past 20 years that she
Right.
knows that if I say that something is safe, it's like she's gonna trust it. So she would have like a cash reserve, as I explained earlier, that would not change, even though we're not 100% in stocks in this portfolio. I would take like a 20% fixed income, roughly. I would still have a cash reserve on top of that. The all-in-one ETF do a lot of things. I mean, they have like low fees. They're professionally managed, so she doesn't need to manage anything. She doesn't need to do
Hmm.
anything for that. You have like automatic rebalancement, so she will never fall into being overexposed to a specific market or a specific sector. Everything is done for her, and you have the ultimate diversification. I did a video a long time ago on the a YouTube channel about XCQT, because there's a that saying of like, oh, you just have to do XCQT and chill. And if you invest in that all-in-one ETF that is like 100% in stocks, it invests in 9,000 different holdings. That is made by iShares, which belongs to BlackRock. You can go for like Vanguard. You can go. You have like plenty of options there. So I'm not trying to sell one or over the other, and they work the similar way. What I found great is if you add like another 20 or 40% in bonds on fixed incomes, you go over 20,000 different holdings. So you get the diversification you wanted. I mean,
Right.
20,000 different holdings. You really need more than this? I don't know. Like, I don't know how it's possible. If you're adding more, you're just going to have more of the same, probably. And again, not perfect. It's not customizable, and you're kind of like locked in that kind of strategy that you're have no power over on. But for my wife, that would be perfect, because
Hmm.
she wouldn't care about starting to think about what's the next move. So there you go.
But Mike, how do you transition to that if it happens? Like, if your spouse were suddenly in charge of managing the investment like tomorrow, what would you want her to do in the first 30 days?
Not panicking. That's a tricky question. It's not easy. I would say right now, what is great about our situation is most of our money is in tax sheltered accounts, so like RSPs, the TFSA. So she could sell everything and then buy the ETF the same day. And then a lot of people will say, "Well, but if I sell, Mike, everybody says do not sell." Yeah, do not sell and wait on the sideline for like years or months and then come back. This is what we say. If you sell stocks and you buy stocks, you're still invested in the same asset allocation. You're still good. So you're up or you're down in a position, doesn't matter. Sell the portfolio, take the money, buy the all in one ETF, and chill. Like that, the point here would be super simple steps. So, like, my son Caleb, who's like 12, could do it, literally. So actually, he's 13. He's going to be mad at me. But anyways, you get the point. I mean, he could just click on the sell button and then buy the XCQT or whatever all-in-one ETF and chill. That's the
but
whole point. If you have non-registered assets, that could be a bit more complicated, because then you have like to figure out taxes. Unfortunately, if you do not have like a laid out plan, I don't really have like a clear solution. So at least the bulk of the investment would be taken care of, which is the most important part.
but would you hire an advisor to help her?
And this is where that could be interesting. So if I get hit by a bus after this podcast, fortunately there's not that many bus going around my house, so I should be safe. But anyways, this is probably what you would do, actually, at least for the beginning, because an advisor doesn't just invest money. And that's the whole point. And I keep on telling her that. You don't hire a financial advisor to manage your portfolio. If you do that, you're not getting the full value. A financial advisor, a real one, will provide you with a comprehensive financial plan. It will review it every year. So you will have your financial projection. You will have everything taken care of there. It will perform tax optimization across the accounts. It will manage the debt structure. It will offer estate planning. He will also call you from time to time to be proactive, and he will take care of the withdrawal mechanics and will provide retirement income. Then he will manage your portfolio. That's what a true advisor will do. Is it optimal because you're paying a fee, maybe like 1.5% in fees for that? No, it's not. Is it going to make sure that you achieve your financial goals and my wife will be able to retire happy, stress free? Yes. Is it worth the cost? Well, if my wife can live a happy retirement without me being there, I mean, hopefully she's gonna like weep every single day once I pass away for the rest of her life.
I'm gonna make sure she doesn't. Okay?
Fair enough. Fair enough. For those who don't know, Vero is my sister-in-law, so definitely she's gonna take her sister's side. But anyways, we're you get the point. You get the point. But again, that would not be the perfect scenario, but it is a scenario that works. That actually really works. So if you're not comfortable with this kind of scenario where you tell your wife or your partner, sell everything, buy all-in-one ETF and chill, the
Mhm.
second best option is to get an advisor. That's going to work very well because a professional is going to take care of the stuff. So it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to do the job and it's going to work.
Listeners, let's empower you in the investment world with our free dividend rockstar list, which includes stock ideas with positive dividend triangles. How does the list help investors, Mike?
You know, Vero, we survey regularly our members and our readers, and we ask them what are their biggest struggle. And one that keeps coming back is really the buy struggle. Most investors don't know what to buy, they don't know when to buy it, and the Rockstar list will help them grow a little bit more their conviction because that list of stock will just include companies that show great financial metrics. Of course, you cannot start by picking them blindly, but it's a pretty good start to make sure that the company that you're about to read and know their business model is actually a business showing revenue growth, earnings growth, and dividend growth. The way I use it usually is I will filter it by sector to identify a sector that I want to have more exposure to, and then I just look for companies that have the strongest dividend growth model.
To download the list, enter your name and email at thedividendguyblog.com/rockstar. Again, hit pause now and go to thedividendguyblog.com/rockstar. Okay, Mike, my next question will either make you laugh or angry, but I need to ask.
I'm ready.
Why not go for income focused strategies like covered calls for your wife?
So you really want me to go on another rampage, right? I mean, jokes aside, there are a lot of like income focused product that I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind like a target fund or annuities. That would, for me, that would be kind of like stuff that could work combined together. And don't get me wrong, that's not that bad. Actually, it's stable. It generates income. It does a lot of work. Covered call, not necessarily sure about that. The thing is, anything that offers you 5% or more in yield as a marketing tool, as they just like, this is one of like the number one feature of the product is they're not telling you how they invest, why they do this. And they're just saying, oh, 5% return, 6% distribution, 25%.
Right.
I don't want to buy that. So again, and we're going back also to the fact that my wife has limited knowledge and zero interest. So if she goes for a covered call ETF, for example, she would not be able to explain that. Like she would not understand how it works. She would not
Good point.
care. And that is incredibly dangerous for any investor. If you're not able to explain how a covered call ETF works to a 12 years old, you're taking a risk by investing in a covered call ETF. And not just covered call ETF. You can go like any kind of products. If you're not able to explain it to a 12 years old, please go back, do your homework and make it clear and simple in your mind. You know, it's kind of funny because sometimes I you're gonna laugh, but I like to to debate, right? I like to like argument, counter argument. I just love doing that. And I'm annoying because I love that. But when I ask someone like, okay, why are you doing this? But I ask it like genuinely, like for whatever reason, it doesn't have to be about finance. And then that person's like, oh, well, because I like it. And I'm like, okay, but why do you like it? And then I go a little bit deeper, but I genuinely want to understand why a certain person do something. And when the person is able to explain, I'm super happy, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. Okay, I might not understand why you're doing it. Like I do understand why you're doing it. I don't share your point of view, but now that
Mhm.
I understand, I get that this point of view is valid. It's based on something and it works. That's fine. Perfect for me. But when some people after the third question, they start to get defensive, and they're not they're because they're not even able to explain why they're doing it. And at this
Right.
point, I'm just like, politics is a good example. Like some people, they're just like, oh, I'm never gonna vote for that person. I'm like, okay, but why? And he's an idiot. Okay, how many hours have you spent with that person to determine he's an idiot or not? Oh, you read that on the news. Okay, so that's not really valid. But if a person tell me, well, I'm not gonna vote for that guy because of this, and that goes against my value. At this point, I don't have to agree or disagree with them. That person has a valid point. So that's the whole point here, going back to investment, is if you're not able to explain how you're investing and how it works and the dynamic when it's a good market, a bad market, and so on, go back to do your homework, because nothing is free, and there's no investment firms giving you money for just for the fun of it. So you have to know where you're coming from when you invest in income focused products, and not fall into that marketing trap, literally, of
Mhm.
not knowing what's going to be the outcome.
And as a political parenthesis here, Mike and I don't necessarily agree on politics, but we still can discuss it, and we don't like get angry, and everything's fine. So it's possible.
We put a timer to make sure. Like after 15 minutes over, like the discussion is done.
Okay, so going back to income products, you have reviewed my 20 focused products for retirees, many of which are valid options for listeners. So, what have you highlighted for each?
So I came from the angle of really trying to explain to that like 12 years old kid, like making it super simple, highlighting pros and cons and common mistakes. So it was not about, oh, I would invest in that or I would not invest in that. That has like no personal bias on it. I just highlight like what's good, what's not good. Like for covered call, for example, like one thing that I say is it works. It works in the sense that it generates income. You're going to receive income, higher income than if you invest in a high underlying asset. So that's totally fair. On the downside, well, if you compare to the underlying assets, you will realize that you generate like less little return. So if someone after that understand how covered calls are limited, but they're happy investing in this type of products, because for them the most important thing is to generate income so they can recreate the paycheck at retirement, but they are willing to pay the price. Again, nothing is free, so there's no perfect solution there. And those guides, we highlight like bad stuff for like cons for all the 20 income focused products. But once you are well aware of them, then you make a better decision. And then for some people, they're going to be super happy with covered call because that meets my retirement needs and that works. And there it's perfect, because now you have
Mhm.
grown the conviction to invest in those products. And that was the purpose of this guide, is to give you that conviction so you know you make the best choice for your situation.
Right. So you can download the Canadian Retirees Guide to Income Producing Investments for free now at thedividendguideblog.com/retirement-loop. Mike, what are your tips to listeners to help them prepare a plan B with their spouse or heirs?
Well, first talk about it. Don't talk too much about your heirs. Maybe they're gonna know that you have like millions of dollars, and maybe you're gonna get run into a bad situation. So just get with your spouse first.
Right.
We have to have fun, right? If not, I'm gonna stop the show right there. I'm not gonna record any other podcast. The second thing is to make an easy to follow plan, like easy to understand, easy to follow, not too many steps. Like I said earlier, best case scenario, sell, buy the all-in-one ETF and chill. That's like a
Mhm.
three-step plan, and it's easy. Keep in mind, there is a price to pay for a simple plan. It is not optimized. It is not up to your taste. But the point is, you're not going to be there anymore. You're not going to be the one who has the hands on the wheel. So it's not going to be 100% to your taste, but it's going to go to the whole point of enjoying retirement and knowing that the person that you left behind are still confident in that strategy and they're able to enjoy their retirement. That's the job here. So you're going to have to pay a small fee for that, but this is the point of not being there anymore.
We've discussed a lot of things, so to end the episode, Mike, please summarize the key points retirees must have in mind to determine how they would invest at retirement.
So the overall plan, regardless of your strategy, should include three types of like buckets, like a bucket of cash, like a cash reserve, cash wedge. It could be like short-term T-bills. It could be GICs, anything that is stable, pays a small interest, and easily accessible. You need a source of stability. So stability of income in terms of dividend, in terms of interest. It could be pension plans. You can combine everything, but you need something stable. And then if you intend to spend a little bit more at retirement and enjoy yourself, you probably need growth. So the third bucket is having a way to generate some total return. So that plan will change from one person to another, but the buckets won't change. Cash, stability, growth. Then if you want to manage your portfolio by yourself, super important to have a global view for optimization. If you do not have the ability to combine all your portfolio into one big portfolio to determine where to put your money at what time, then you're going to make mistakes. For your spouse that has no interest in investing, keep a simple plan. Even if it means call this guy, he's a financial advisor, he's going to take care of you. Yes, I know it's going to burn you saying that, but it's for the best of your spouse, your partner, your children, your grandchildren. There is a price to pay for simplicity and for someone taking care of it, but it's better to plan it so you still have a little bit of control over there. But as long as it's a simple plan, everybody will be able to follow it and they will continue to kind of like you will leave that legacy, like the hard work you did will continue to produce income and produce gifts for the person that you love.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Mike, for sharing your retirement investment plan. Listeners, do not miss Mike's review on 20 income products by downloading our Canadian Retirees Guide at thedividendguideblog.com/retirement loop. For our show notes and related content, visit thedividendguideblog.com/227. Make sure you do not miss any episode. Hit the subscribe button underneath our podcast logo and leave us a 5-star rating. Until next week, stay invested.
Stay invested. Hey, fellow investors, it's Mike here. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. Please note that the Dividend Guide Blog podcast is at no time issuing buy or sell recommendation. Please do your own due diligence as this podcast is recorded for information and hopefully fun purposes only. Make your research, make sure you do your stuff. We're not responsible for your losses or your profit after listening to this episode. And until next one, stay invested.